Daf Nun Tes Summit Base, 8 lines from the top. Omer Ma Vein Mar V'Noisul Chatzoim. You can't make the Eruv L'Chatzoim. If you have a city, we learned in the Brisa previously that if you have a city which is a Ir Shel Yochid V'Nasa Shel Rabim, and a Rishus Rabim is Averes B'Seichai, you can merge the city together, but you can't do it in parts. It's El Oy Kula, or the entire city together, or Movi Bifnei Asmar, or each Movi separately. But you can't be marvit in sections, in parts. So Omer Marvein Marvin Esluchatzoin, Omer Papaloy, Omer El Ark. That's only, we say that when you want to divide it, when you want to contemplating splitting it along the length. Aval Rachva Ma'arvin. But on the width, then it's mutter. So, for instance, if you have a scenario as follows. If you have, let's say these are chatzeres, and there's a back wall here, and there's chatzeres, and they open up to a mavui. The mavui opens up to Rishus Rabim. Here also you have chatzeres, and it opens to a Movi, which opens to Rishus Rabim. And this continues along the whole city. You have Chatzeres, series of Chatzeres, open to a Movi, which opens to the street. The Rishus Rabim runs from one end of the city to the other end of the city. So here you can make a shituv, you can join the whole city together. But to split it along the length, and to say, these chatzeres on this side, they will join together. These chatzeres on this side, they will join together, but they are separate from them. So this side is separate from them. They join in one shituf and they join on the other. That you can't do. Because since this was a Ir Shel Yochid, it was considered to be like one chatzer. Just like if you have a chatzer, in one chatzer itself you have batim, houses open into the courtyard. Everybody in the courtyard has to join together with the shituf. You can't have it just partially joined together. Then it's not an Eruv. The chatzer, in order to be defined, an Eruv, a chatzer, to allow you to carry, is you treat it like it's all one ownership. The concept of the Eruv is, if you have a house, you can't carry from the house to the chatzer because the house is a private ownership. The chatzer is ownership in common. It has the appearance of carrying from the Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaRabim. People would think that you can carry from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. To join in an Eruv Chatzeres, in an Eruv, it has to be everybody together, because if they're not all joined in the Eruv, it still has the appearance from private to a public kind of ownership, because it's not all one. When you make the Eruv, the concept is they're all joined together. It's all considered like one. So it's the same ownership that is in the house to the chatzer. It's private to private, not private to public. Similarly, over here, if you have the city and you want to divide it on this way along the length and say, well, this half of the city is joined together and this half of the city is joined together, well, you can't do that because it was all considered one city. They all have access to the Rishus HaRabim, that goes through. And then since they all have access to this Rishus HaRabim, therefore you can't deny them from that use. They all have the use of it, so therefore you can't split them. If they're not all joined together, then it is different ownerships in the middle of the city. There's different ownerships. There's this side of the city that's using the street, which is not part of the shituf of this side, and this side is using this part of the street, and they're not part of the shituf on this side. So you have different ownerships, multiple ownerships, and therefore it's not a valid Eruv. But however, if you want to split it this way, the chatzeres over here will be separate. They'll have one shituf. The chatzeres over here will have a different shituf. And that you can do because you separate the two sides of the city. You make a separation. You have the Rishus HaRabim that runs through here. You separate this side, the chatzeres on this side will be one section, and this will be another section. So they have access, these Chatzeres will have access to this part of the Rishus Harabim and not the other, and they'll have access to this part over here and not this part of the Rishus Harabim. So you make a separation and consider it, therefore, like two separate Chatzeres that don't have access to each other. The Rishonim point out, says Rebbeinu Peretz, that you would need a Tzuras of Pesach, even according to this approach that you could do this way, you would need a Tzuras of Pesach to separate the two sides of the city. But then you could do it in that way. So that's how we want to qualify it at this point. So therefore, he says that you can separate it along the width in that manner. So Kiman, who's Rav Papa going like? Like Rabbi Kiva. Apparently, this is not like Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says, "Ho Amar." He says, "Regula muteres b'mekayma." If you have a regula that you have a section, an area that they have the permitted use in their area, he says that will answer even out of their area. Even though it's permitted, it's in its own place. It will answer even beyond its own place. So what is the case that we're talking about here? We're talking about if you have chatzeros, inner and outer chatzeros. And you have the street here is the Rishus Harabim. For these people in the inner chatzer, they, even if they join together here and they make Eruv chatzeros, so they're mutter within their own courtyard. But now, if they did not join in an Eruv with these chatzeros, with the people over here, now they have a right of way. The Rishus Harabim is here. They have a right of way that they pass through to get to the Rishus Harabim. So if they were not joined together in one big Eruv, it's a regular muteres b'mekayma. It's a seresh shalei b'mekayma, because since they have the right of way here, they pass through. They have drisus haregel here. They have usage of this chotzer, and if they're not part of the Eruv, they will answer it on this chotzer. So let us say that we say over here, the Rav Papa says it's muter. It's not like Rabbi Akiva, because over here, if you're saying that you can split the city along the width and the two halves of the city, well, they have a permitted use here. Now, if they want to get to this end of the street or this end of the town, it's a similar type of a case. It'll be a regular muteres b'mekayma. It should be oiseres shalei b'mekayma, and similarly over here, it should be a regular that's muteres b'mekayma, and should answer it shalei b'mekayma, that it will answer it over here on this side of the city. So let's say Rav Papa's statement that that's not consistent with the shita of Rabbi Akiva, because according to Rabbi Akiva, he says a regular muteres b'mekayma aser shalei b'mekayma. When it says no, afilu tema Rabbi Akiva, you could say it is consistent with Rabbi Akiva. Ad kan lekam Rabbi Akiva hasam. He only says about the two chatzeres, one in bifnim, the other inner one, and an outer one. El b'shtei chatzeres zu lefnim izu, the pnim is less like pischa achrina. Because the inner one, its only access to the street. And only access to the street is to pass through the outer chatzer. So therefore, it aser shalei b'mekayma v'alhacha. But in the case of here of the city of this town, hanafki b'hai pischa, v'hanafki b'hai pischa, they each have their own end of the city. They have the Rishus Harabim on one end, and they have it on the other end. They can exit the city from this end, and they exit from the other end. They're considered two separate areas. They don't have to pass through one over the other. So therefore, it could be consistent with the sheet of Rabbi Akiva. Ikadamri, some say a different version. Amar Papa, Loi Tema, don't say la'arku d'loi marvin. Aval rach b'marvin, don't say that when it says you can't be marvin in halves. It's only on the length, but on the width you could. No, ela fil la'rach nami loi marvin. Even on the width you cannot be marvin. So Kiman, Rabbi Akiva, let's say that this is consistent with Rabbi Akiva, that the reason you can't do it even on the width is because the regular is muteres b'mekayma, aser shalei b'mekayma, because according to the Rabbanan, you should not say that. The Gemara says no. Afilu tema Rabbanan. You can even say it goes according to the Rabbanan. Argue with Rabbi Kiva. Ad kan loy kam Rabbanan hasam. Even though the Tanakam over there says, but the inner chotzer, that it does not aser on the outer chotzer. That's el b'shtei chatzeres ulefnei mizu. That's only in that case where you have the two chatzeres, one in and one outer. The pnimis achtel adash l'mishtamsh, because the inner one, the inner chotzer, we can force it to close its doors and only use in its confined area. We would say kaifin amidas daim and say that use for the Shabbos your internal chotzer. You're allowed to carry within your chotzer, and therefore don't exit and don't use the access, the right of way to the street, and don't aser on the outer chotzer. We tell them close your doors and only use your inner chotzer, your area within yourself. Aval hacha mi matzah mesakta reshus hacha. But over here, in this case, you can't tell the people in the town that you can't use the other side of the street. The Reshus Harabim is a Reshus, a street that belongs to all of them. In the case of where they have the right of way on passing over the outer chotzer, you can say that for Shabbos, close your door and don't use this right of way that passes over the other chotzer. But in the street, when you have the Reshus Harabim that runs from one end of the street to the other one, the Reshus Harabim belongs to the whole city. It belongs equally to the whole city. It's not like one belongs to one half more than the other half. You arbitrarily are trying to divide it in that way. They have a right, and they have an ownership, an equal ownership in that side of the street. So therefore, perhaps over here, even the Rabbanan, who argue in Rabbi Kiva in the case of the Chatzeres, would agree that you cannot separate the city, not only along the length, but even along the width. So we learn in the Brisa that this type of a city, either you have to make one sheet for the whole city, or each mavoi on its own. Why do you say that you can't do it in halves? Because one half will asr on the other one. Why should we allow to make each mavoi separately? They would also, each mavoi would asr on the other. Just like you say two halves you can't because one half will asr on the other half. Well, mavoi, each mavoi independently, one mavoi will asr on the other. More answers in Chanami, but and we're talking specifically in this case, we're talking where the Movi that did not join with the rest of them made a separation. They made a separation by making an entrance. So there seems to be two opinions about where this entrance is. Either that the Movi makes a wall, it separates itself from the Reshus Harabim. Either what it means is that they make a wall here with an entranceway from the Reshus Harabim, and therefore separating themselves from the rest of the city. Or it means is that they make a doorway in the back wall over here, and that they can exit this way, therefore not availing themselves of the streets, separating themselves from the rest of the city. But they clearly make a separation between them and the rest of the city. Like he said, if the residents of a chaser in a movet, one of the residents, if he made a small entrance for the chaser's opening, if he made this daka, he doesn't aser on the movoi. Similarly, over here we say, therefore, if they made a daka, then they separate themselves from the city, and they can make a separate shituf without asering on the rest of the city. The Brisa said, if the town was shel rabim, it was public, and it's still public. If it only has one entrance to the city, if it's only open on one end, then you can join the entire town in one area if you don't need a shiur. If it's a public city, it remains public, it has openings on both ends, then you have to have a shir. You have to have a section that is not within the Eruv. But if it only has an opening on one end, then that's not required. Rav Zera joined the city of Rav Chia. He joined it in the way with one Eruv, and he did not leave an area excluded from the Eruv, from the Shituf. He did not leave an area out of it. He did not make a shiur. So l'chera, he therefore understood that it was a city that was a Ir Shel Yochid that became an Ir Shel Rabim, and therefore you don't need a shiur. Amar le Abai said to him, my time Avin Marhachi, why did you do that? Why didn't you leave a shiur? Amar le Savadida, Amar le, he said, the elders of the town told me that Rav Chia bar Asi Ma'arav Kula, that Rav Chia bar Asi, he joined the entire town in one Erev, that he didn't leave a shiur. Va'amina, and therefore I thought, Va'amina Shmamina, that must mean that Ir Shel Yochid and Asa Shel Rabim, that originally it was a private city and became an Ir Shel Rabim, and therefore you do not need a shiur. Amrle, he said no. Amrle Abai said to him, Amrle Hanasave, they told me, the elders told me that no, that's not the case. But the reason that initially a shiur was not required is not because it was initially a private city. It was always Shel Rabim. But it was not open on both ends. The reason why a shiur wasn't required because it was not open on both ends. At one end it was open. At the other end there was a garbage dump, a heap of garbage that blocked it off. So therefore it was only open on one end. If it's only open on one end, therefore you don't need a shiur. So they said, but now they removed the garbage, the dump, and now it's open on both ends. If it's open on both ends and it's Ir Shel Rabim, you need a shiur. You have to leave over an area that's excluded from the shituf. So also now it has open on both ends, and it's also I didn't realize, and therefore you do need a shiur. Rabami bar Adavar Paname Rabba, he asked him the following Shaila Sulam Mikan Pesach Mikan Mahu. If on one end it's open, it has a proper Pesach. The other end it only has a ladder, it only has a sulam. Is it considered to be open on both ends and therefore you need a shiur? Or is it only considered to be open on one end? On one end it has a proper Pesach, but the other end it only has a ladder. You climb up the ladder, and as the Ritva explains, he elucidates this, that you have one ladder, and then on one end, and then there's another ladder on the other side. So you climb up the ladder, you go walk across the wall, and you go down on the other end. So is that considered like a Pesach, and is it considered like open on both ends or not? So what was the din? Ma'u Omerle, he said, Hachi Amar Rav, this is what Rav said, Sulam Teres Pesach Halam. A ladder has the din of a Pesach, and therefore it's considered to be open on both ends, and therefore you need a shiur. Omerle Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman said to them, like to tzitzulei, don't listen to this. Rabbi misunderstood this. Hachi Amar Rav, Sulam Teres Pesach Halav, Teres Mechitz Halav. He didn't say definitively that it has a din of a Pesach. It can have a din of a Pesach, but it can have a din of a Mechitza. We go in Eruvin, we go lakula, so we treat it, wherever it's a kula, we either treat it as a mechitza or as a Pesach. Now, in our case over here, treating it like a Pesach would be a chumrah, would mean that you cannot be ma'arav the whole town together. Therefore, we consider it to be not a Pesach, to be a mechitza, and it's only open on one end. So now he explains. Teres mechitza law of kiram. It has a din of mechitza, like in our case, that we don't consider it to be a Pesach on both ends. It's not considered to be open on both ends, and therefore you don't need a shiur. Taras Pesach Allah, where does it have a din of a Pesach? In the following case, Besulam shebein shtei chatzeres, in a sulam that's between two chatzeres. Ratzum echad ma'arev, if they want, they can be ma'arev echad. Ratzum ma'arev shnayim. And if they want, they can be ma'arav shnaim. So if you have, in a case where you have two chatzeres, now in order to join together in an eruv, they have to be open to each other. And they have to be open to each other, and therefore they can join together. Not only the chutzner here, but they can join together to carry from here to here. But if there's a wall between them that separates them as a mechitza, they're separate. So they have no access to each other, and therefore they can't be ma'arav echad. They have to be ma'arav together and carry here. They're ma'arav here if they want and carry here, but they can't carry from one to the other. But if you have a ladder that now allows you access to the other chutzner, so if you have a ladder that allows you to climb up here, you can walk across the wall, and if there's another ladder on the other side that you can come down, and you can walk down here. So we can view this, the ladder, as a mechitza, as a Pesach, rather, not a mechitza, but as a Pesach. So even though now they're separated, and there's no proper opening and entrance between them, but if they have ladders that allows you to come across and come down, so that's considered to be like an access, it's considered to be like a Pesach, and that gives them the ability, if they so choose, to be ma'arav, to join together with one Erev, and to carry from one to the other. So we're making, but in our case, the kula is to consider the ladder not to be a Pesach, but as a mechitza, which allows you to be ma'arav the whole city together without a shiur.